Hi. So I'm recording a video now. You guys will probably see it in class, maybe. And I'm going to talk to you about the unit that I made for the first 6 weeks of school in the fall. Sorry I can't be there. I'm probably listening to a wonderful viola recital, but it's totally worth it, and I hope you guys have a great class. Probably like many of you, I focused on the 5 great lessons, but I was really interested in looking more at a lot of storytelling and the different creation stories that we have. So that was kind of the first part that I really wanted to focus on in my unit. But my ultimate goal towards the end was to create a travel brochure to travel back in time through multiple stories. And so I made one kind of like this. I didn't put any color on it because I was just throwing it together, but thought it might be helpful to kind of see what I'm talking about. So in my unit, I focused on the 5 great lessons. The first one, so for I did the story of the universe, and I made sure to do 3 different follow-ups for each of the groups. So for first years, they needed to draw their favorite scene from the first great lesson. So not focusing on writing at all, since I'm not really sure where their writing is at first week in school. The second graders would pick their favorite experiment and kind of write about how it works. So ideally, after they've seen it at least another year, they can talk about it. I'm sure a lot of them will choose the volcano because it's very popular, understandably. The third graders are going to start reading other creation stories and share them with a friend. So instead of putting the pressure on them to write their own creation story, which is quite a lot, or do other kinds of writing, I figured a first week back thing would be just to do some reading and get back into the swing of things. So those are the goals for the first great lesson. And I guess as I talk through this, you'll kind of see how they come into this. There's going to be some editing reviews that will play in later, so I included that in my unit plan as well. Capitals and periods, just starting with the basics. So week 2, the second great lesson. First graders, again, we're just sticking with coloring, so they get to color in a timeline of life. And the second graders get to start with sentences, and they write 5 different sentences on different plants and different animals in different periods. So it gives them a chance to look through the whole timeline and really find out or discover what interests them. So for a research project perhaps later on. And the third graders are going to write a story about how each group of animals evolved to a next. So we talk about, going from mammals, I should start with fish, then to amphibians and all those kinds of things and how they evolved. So they get to write a story about either themselves evolving from something to another, or 2 specific animals. So to get them thinking about being creative and using their imagination and how these groups of animals evolved. Excuse me. In language, this is another part that ties into the units. I want to be doing some metal insets with the first graders just to boost up their fine motor skills, and then starting some persuasive writing with the third graders. So that'll come in later on, but as they begin to write more creative stories, learning how to convince an audience and what's going to pull them in. Just the very basics of that, I think. Okay, so the third great lesson about humans and hands. Follow-up for the first graders is to draw a hand and write things that you can do when you have a hand. So a lot of this, I did this in my internship last semester, write kind things that you can do to help people and things you can do with your hands. Second grade is to write on a prompt. So this gets them kind of started into more writing and more cohesive writing rather than just sentences. But what would it be like to not have hands? And I think with this age group, and especially with second graders, they can really think that well, of course we always have hands. So what would happen if you didn't have hands? I would be really interested to hear what they say. And the third grade is they need to write a persuasive piece on why humans should have hands. So hopefully they'll be listening to reasons why humans have hands and what it has helped them with, and so they can write a little bit of a persuasive piece on that. There's some noun review, and then also for second graders, they can do a follow-up that after writing their piece, they can identify all the nouns. So I'm starting to incorporate different parts from my scope and sequence into this so that it's all tied together. All right, so the fourth week we do history of language. And for this one, I wanted to branch out a little bit and have students work on, multi-age groups of students work on creating their own language. I remember doing something where I created my own math system when I was in high school, and that was really interesting. But I feel like, I don't know, I'm just curious to see what happens with this. I think that students will enjoy, thinking about language in that way, and I think that's a great way to understand how our language started and how it was created and how it evolved. And then to start with their public speaking, have each group present to the class and talk about the language that they created, if they got some of it created, or the troubles that they had. I think this is a great community building exercise, and it's something that I chose to do a couple weeks later so that because one, it fit with history of language, but also like as they've started to build their community or like get to know one another, they can build their community a little bit more that way by working together. Week 5, history of math. I thought it would be kind of interesting for to have examples of counters that they used in the early stages of math, and have first graders try to use that to compare with their Golden Bee material dynamic addition stuff. So have them see what it's like to use those versus what it's like to use the Golden Bees and which one's easier, which one they like. Second graders, I thought I might have them try creating their own system of counting, so like I did in high school. So theirs is similar to the history of language. I think they might enjoy trying that one more time. And then third graders, my follow-up for them is to write about what it would be like to not have numbers. So similar to a second grade follow-up that I did for with the humans and hands. This is third grade, what it would be like to not have numbers. So we talk about that in the beginning of the history of numbers and what people needed to do. And so putting the third graders back into that mindset of what that would be like. I connected some math into that unit as well, or into that week, so that's in the unit plan as well. And then the final week is to put all these things together, so that would be into this travel brochure. So you'd have to talk about the travel brochure at the beginning. I think what I would do is connect it a little bit more with like, oh, remember, where did you travel over the summer, or did you stay here, and how would you advertise that, or how would you talk about it? What would make people want to come and visit where you went? Or if you stayed at home, what would make people want to come and see what you did over the summer? So I think this is backwards, so you won't be able to read it, but it says, take a trip to the 5 great lessons, explore, discover, learn, and travel. And it's like a travel back in time kind of thing. So I made a front page, and then I took some pieces and parts of what they might do and put it into this little bit. So the first one, I tried to make the image of the Hubble Deep Field picture from NASA. I really like that picture. Obviously this doesn't do it justice, but it's a little bit here and there. And then I wrote some sentences that the second graders would have written. So the picture on the top would have been something that first graders would have done about the first grade lesson maybe, and they can organize this however. And I said, light was created when the universe began. So straightforward sentence to start with. There are 3 states of matter, solid, liquid, and gas, so this would be pulling directly from the follow-up they did earlier. And then on the Earth, elements react with one another, and some explode and others don't, talking about the volcano. So that's from the first grade lesson. The second grade lesson I put over here. It's only partially developed. I didn't do the whole thing, but I said, this is a second grader's part. Dinosaurs lived in the Mesozoic era, and humans live in the very end of the Cenozoic era. And then I drew part of like the timeline of life, and I think because that's what the first grader did, they colored it in, so maybe they could draw parts of it or draw some animals. I'm sure they'd love to draw animals. And then the middle, I put, this is a story that one of the third graders might write on, and I titled it, What Have Hands Done for Us Anyways? So bear with me as I read this to you. Hands are very important to humans. Not only do we use them on a regular basis, but we have progressed this far because of them. We needed them to start fire, to build our shelters, and to create tools. I am thankful for my hands because I use them to bake cookies and ride horses. It is important that humans keep our hands so we can use them to help others and discover more things about the universe. straightforward. I'm sure plenty of them will have pushbacks and be like, I can't write about this, but I think it'll be a great way to stretch their imaginations, especially as they enter this 3rd grade year. And then I just wrote a little blurb on this side that says, have we convinced you? Travel back in time through the 5 great lessons and discover what you've always wanted to know. So that's the end of my travel brochure. Yeah, so hopefully that's was informational and something you enjoyed. I think it would be kind of interesting, and I'm really looking forward to giving it a try in the fall. I'm sure there's some things that I'll tweak or suddenly change before I start, but that was a good time for me to put it together. So enjoy the rest of your class, and I will talk to you all soon. Okay.